Realize I was going in and out because I see the YouTube little button still at the top of my screen here. And I didn't notice it going away. So I thought we have been live streaming this entire time because I see it now. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Delegate Tavares.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, everybody. I think that this is really a fruitful conversation. I really appreciate Delegate Austin and Delegate Harrison and all the work that they've been putting in to this. Um, I can't thank you enough. I do believe we need to know what has changed from the last conversation with regards to where the school board stands and where the superintendent stands on these issues. And I do believe that I know that we've had some conversations, and I believe there was an issue raised with the concern that if we are taxing landlines, it's going to adversely affect seniors. And I do believe that if we're going to go that route, I'm sorry, I don't think that it should be on the back of seniors. It should be on the backs of individuals that actually have vested interest in the school system, which are parents. And most parents have cell phones. So I do think that we need to revisit this, that it's maybe not right for this legislation. To me, is just not right for prime time just yet. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate Tavares. I think that's part of the amendment is for it to apply to cell phones, is my understanding. But I see Delegate Buafo's hand, and then I will give an opportunity for Mr. Young to answer some of the questions that were posed to the administration. Delegate Buafo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A really quick question for Delegate Alston. I know you don't have the amendment in hand, but you talked about raising a different portion of the tax. I'm just curious if you can kind of give us a general overview as to what your expected amendment will be.
May I, Madam Chair?
Yes. Yes, Delegate Alston, sorry.
Thank you for that question, Delegate Buafo. So my proposed amendment would be to give the county a choice whether to raise the telecommunication tax or to allow them the ability to increase the adequate public facilities tax that goes to education that is taxed on development whenever new development comes. And so by raising that, they can generate a lot more revenue. And that is an ongoing thing as well. So I wanted to give them multiple options so that we're not just balancing this budget deficit on the backs of our constituents alone. We're giving some options as to where that revenue can be generated and to make sure that they're not waiving that adequate public facilities tax.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Alston. I appreciate that. Mr. Young, well, do you want to, I think there was a question about the cell phones versus landlines. And I think there was a question, I'm trying to remember what the other question was, but if you can address those, that would be great.
Thank you, Delegate Williams. And so I'll address I believe it was Delegate Harrison that brought up the requirements around reporting. Those are still included in this legislation. None of that was removed in terms of the encouragement for programs of the school system and then the reporting criteria. On the point around, I believe it was the funding, and this goes into the excise tax and why certain counties have that, is that our telecommunications is structured very different than it was when these bills were first enacted. And so most of us had landlines at the time. Mobile services weren't utilized as much. We've seen other counties move to this excise, or, counties like Montgomery County have had it all along. And so when we look at counties that have just a telecommunications sales tax, like Anne Arundel County, those revenues decrease over time because of the way that we use our cell phones have changed. A flat excise tax would expand, not target further, but would expand who would actually be taxed to include all of those mobile devices. And so I think that is the benefit, is that we're capturing more of what was originally captured when this bill was enacted. And so not a targeting, but essentially trying to return to how we applied the tax originally, which was for the majority of devices. And so that flat excise tax enables to encompass all of the things that we use our cell phone now, not just traditional telecommunications, i.e. phone calls that are generated in the county. And then on the revenue piece, because there is flexibility, there is not a single number, but the move from the sales tax to the excise tax, because it will apply to more devices across the board, would increase depending on how high the county council would set that limit. And currently in the bill, there is a ceiling of the $3.50, which could generate an additional, $30 million by applying it across the board to all of our devices, including our mobile devices.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Young. I'm Delegate Taveras, and then I see Delegate Harrison and then Delegate Lewis.
Thank you. So I guess three quick things. Is this exercise, this is on top of, not on top of, or I guess supplanting? The other issue was addressing Ms. Austin's amendment, just reminding people that development inside the Beltway, I believe, is not charged. And so I think that that's something that there is opportunity there. But it may have a disincentive for further development, but I don't think that that's actually gonna pan out. But just as a heads up. And then finally, my question did not get answered with regards to what has changed with regards to the position of the other
Okay, we'll
the other
get to the-
stakeholders. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get to the last part of your question in a second, Delegate Taveras. Mr. Young, if you want to answer Delegate Taveras' question about whether or not this is on top of or.
Correct. And so the way the amendment is drafted is that it is or language that gives the county flexibility, and actually it will align with the flexibility that we see from other jurisdictions, i.e. those that have local taxing authority, to be able to make those decisions at the local level. And so there's not a mandate that these bills or these taxes are stacked or separate. It simply enables the county council to use those tools.
Thank you. And then you wanted to know where, if I remember correctly, Delegate Taveras, where the superintendent and the school board is on this?
And the school board.
Yes, okay. I believe Superintendent House is on the line. And then I don't know if Chair Mickens Murray is on the line for the school board. But Superintendent House, if you want to answer that question.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair and honorable delegates. First of all, thank you all for the opportunity to appear this morning. As you can imagine, the Prince George's County School District recognizes the fiscal challenges ahead as all parties really navigate the FY 24-25 budget landscape. PGCPS is dedicated to working collaboratively with all the stakeholders, including our board, our county executive's office, to ensure that every effort is made to mitigate any adverse impacts. With that being said, I do have my chief financial officer on. As you all know, my position has been no position the entire time from day one. What we have tried to do is just share impacts. We do have both my chief financial officer as well as, I believe, my board chair and vice chair on the line, should you want some more insight from them as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Superintendent House. And Chair, let me scroll through my boxes here. Mickens Murray, if she's here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, if you want to answer Delegate Taveras' question, please.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Chair. The school board is still committed to being opposed to this bill passing, but also I need everyone to understand that we recognize the difficulties that we have across the county with the paying of, with the constraints of escalating challenges with the budget. We did have a discussion, and the discussion, the majority of the board wanted us to reiterate to you that we are opposed. But I also recognize that the vice chair, the superintendent, and I are very much aware that sometimes decisions need to be made, because we make those decisions all the time as a school board. We listen, but we do what is best for the citizens. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and look forward to future partnerships.
Delegate Harrison, and then I see Delegate Lewis, and then we're gonna have to move on as I'm looking at the clock. It's 10:21.
Thank you. I just wanted to make it clear that I was not saying that that was not in the bill, that those portions were not in the bill, but the bill itself does strike some language that is in the code. And it basically states that it takes out if I remember correctly, of course, now I can't find it since looking at everything else. But it strikes language that takes out, does not supplant, basically. And it is on page 3, starting at line 12. It says that the proceeds under this section for Prince George's County School System may be used to do this. So I'm sorry, may be used to meet the funding needs and requirements. So it strikes out a lot of the language. But I didn't want you to think that I was saying that we were taking out the reporting piece. It doesn't do that. And so I guess my point was that I'm not sure how much of the reports I've seen. And have we seen a proof of progress in reading and mathematics? That was my point. Have we seen that proof of progress in reading and mathematics from these taxes? And are we getting the report by December the 31st of each year on this? So I just wanted to clarify my statements. I didn't want it to be misunderstood. Thank you.
Yes, if you can, thank you, Delegate Harrison. I apologize. Again, I'm having some connectivity issues.
Maybe we need to talk to somebody about some Wi-Fi in here.
I know.
We
the
all are
Wi-Fi in the
having
house
multiple
office
problems.
building.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. Delegate Lewis.
Sure, thank you. So my question, if I may, is for Ron in the county. I just want us to walk through the math really quickly, so that everyone can be on the same page. So, as I understand it, the current telecommunications tax raises something to the tune of $60 million, right?
So, Delegate Lewis, we're looking at the combination there of telecommunications and the energy and use sales tax is how we get that 60. The telecommunications it fluctuates, but around 12 to 14 million a year.
All right, so it's 12 to 14 million. And with what this bill is asking to do, it would increase the capacity to be generated up to 30.
A rough estimate, yes.
Okay. All right. So in line with that, because it's a different one, but the energy bill, the energy tax, how much do we anticipate with the changes they are generating?
So for the energy and use sales tax, there is no change to the mechanism for that tax there. It is simply the change in the dedication for that tax to be applied towards the blueprint payment, not on top of the blueprint payment.
Okay. So, and how much is that in total out of the 60?
So out of the 66 million estimate, it's around 54 million, 53 to 54 million.
Okay.
And also, I just want to clarify, Mr. Young, my understanding, please absolutely correct me if I'm wrong, that we're not increasing the energy tax. We're just,
Correct.
like you said, recommitting the funds. So that's going to stay the same as it relates to all the constituents. And with the telecommunications tax, we're not increasing that tax as well, but there is a provision that will give the county council, it's enabling legislation to give the county council the right at a future date, if they wanted to implement the excise tax, to do so, but we're not requiring them to implement the excise tax. Is that correct?
Correct, that the bills as written for the energy and sales use do not make any changes to the amount collected. And for the telecommunications tax, it keeps the current sales tax intact, but enables the county council to modernize the tax to, at a future date, possibly do that, which would in turn raise revenue. But the bills as written do not constitute any change in our current tax structure.
Okay, all right. I just
Thank
wanna make
you.
that clarification.
So we're talking about an increase potentially of somewhere between 16 to 18 million from the telecommunication tax that we generated, right?
Correct, an additional, so it would be an additional 30 million on top of the 14.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, that'll go on top. So has there been any effort of communication between the school system and you guys to essentially make them whole with the additional, right? So it gives you flexibility, we'll make our blueprint payment, but there's still money left over, right? Like, is there any commitment you guys are willing to give them to just make sure any hole that they have could be made from that difference?
So I guess one point there is that was part of our agreement with the school systems originally, as we were talking about these, was to help address some of that gap with the availability payment, around $27 million that we would be helping to dampen any impact. But I think it's important to then take a step back a little further when we talk about the budget hole, is that the blueprint payment does grow. And so the additional flexibility would be helping the county to continue to meet that requirement. Because I think that's paramount, is that this is really about balancing our budget to provide the services for our constituents and to also meet the blueprint requirement of our local share. And so I think that that's important to note. And so that increase would go to support continuing to meet that blueprint requirement. But when we talk about the school system's budget, with the blueprint and with these additional money, they're receiving, as we draw it out, around 50 million additional from what they received in FY24. And so when we talk about budget gaps, I think it's really important to note that the blueprint does help us continue to fund and grow the funding that we send to our schools. And that's why the taxes were set up this way. And that if the county council was to, make the move to the excise tax, that would go a long way in helping the county continue to meet the blueprint requirement.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just think it's really helpful to color this conversation with exact figures and less of other things. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, you're welcome. I'm sorry, I'm still having some connectivity issues. I'm gonna skip and go to Delegate Martinez for a second.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to Delegate Lewis's point, I want to talk exact figures as well. If Chair McMickens, Murray or Superintendent House, is it true that we passed a budget, or the school board passed a budget last night with the expectation that they would receive the monies as they currently do without this bill being in effect?
We've worked through the budget process over the course of the last several weeks. Given that this bill has only been proposed and has not passed, we did move forward with that. And I would like to answer the last gentleman's question in reference to finances. My chief financial officer is on the call, and he asked about exact numbers. And so would love to give her the opportunity to share our impact in reference to exact numbers, if at all possible, Madam Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. Ms. Howell, is she, I'm assuming that's who you're referencing.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members, for giving me this opportunity to be able to address the question. So I do want to just kind of frame up our total revenue year over year. As many of you know, we're facing the impact of the COVID relief grants going away. So our federal funds are decreasing $86 million. We are increasing the revenue we're getting from the state by $53 million. We are increasing the use of our fund balance in order to help close our deficit of $50 million. And then the budget that was approved last night that will be transmitted reflects the current budget as it stands, with the energy telecom still included, reflects an increase from the county of $30 million. If the energy and telecom is not going to be coming to the school system on top of the blueprint funding, the decrease from the county year over year will be a net decrease of $34 million. If the county agrees to help make the system whole, or to try to support the impact or minimize the impact of that decrease by paying the P3 payment of $27 million that was referenced to earlier, the net change year over year in the contribution from the county will still be a decrease of $6.5 million. So there will be an impact from the county specifically to the school system as a whole right now. As it stands, the budget that was approved last night is increasing $50 million. But you take away that $64 million, it will be a net decrease overall. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. Thank you very much. We're gonna go, and we're pressed for time, members. I just wanted everyone to be mindful, we have to get to the floor. And so really quickly, I see Delegate Lehman and then Chair Pena-Melnick, and then we're gonna have to cap it at that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the courtesy. I am driving, and I know we are not supposed to drive and be on these meetings, but this is a really important conversation, so that is why my camera is turned off. To Mr. Young, you know, this is, again, what happens when something this significant comes in as a late filed bill. I cannot emphasize enough, you know, how frustrating it is that this conversation began in January. It's not the time to launch a conversation about something so significant. But be that as it may, the description, and I don't think you're glossing over intentionally, but the description of the change in the telecom tax, you know, first of all, we cannot compare ourselves to Montgomery County. Montgomery County has unique taxing authority under state law. It does not need permission from the General Assembly to do anything. The Montgomery County Council and county government can, you know, impose any kind of fees or taxes they want. So it's not, you know, it's not a fair comparison. It's apples to oranges. I requested on behalf of the delegation some information from the legislative library about what other counties were doing this. Montgomery aside, and I couldn't see in the law that they had recently imposed an excise tax. At least that's not what the library turned up. Anne Arundel has never done it. Now, maybe the Anne Arundel delegation gave the Anne Arundel County Council the ability to do it. They have never exercised that. So we don't really have any other county to look to. But my question is, again, about the 3%. You're characterizing it as if it is, it's on new devices. It is not. We contemplated, as did every other county years and years ago, that we could not just apply this tax to landlines. Obviously, everybody was switching to mobile devices. I was told that this was about what percentage of the bill gets taxed. And 3%, we can all get our mind around that. But instead of the 9% tax, it's in the law now, only applying to, you know, the line itself, the phone line itself, that now, and please clarify this, the 3% would apply to everything associated with the phone, all the apps, all the additional services, streaming, and whatever else. Am I misunderstanding what you're trying to do? Could you please clarify that?
Yeah.
Madam
and
Chair, if I could.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Right before you answer that, Mr. Young, I just want to clarify one thing. While we did hear this bill during our late file bill hearing, the request for both of these bills was actually sent to DLS in October. And I'm sure, as all of the members had experienced this legislative session, DLS was very slow with a lot of members' bills, including some of the delegation bills. So I do want to clarify that while it was part of our late file bill hearing, that was not the intent. We just never got the bill back in time from DLS to have it as part of our regular public bill hearing in December. So I just wanted to kind of clarify.
Madam Chair, I thank you for that footnote. I did not realize that. However, I would just say the administration knows how to work a bill. We could have been getting calls and office visits and emails about the fact that this was in the pipeline. No, I don't know about the rest of you, but absolutely no one reached out to me about this. This is so consequential. There should have been early conversations, like when that drafting request went in. Respectfully, thank you.
No problem, no problem. Mr. Young, if you want to answer the other questions, I did just want to kind of clarify that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so, Delegate Lehman, I did want to respond to those pieces around what the telecommunications tax versus the excise piece would be, is that this is not a changing to a 3%. I think it's the excise piece is going to be a flat rate of $3.50, the maximum of $3.50 placed on those lines. And so while the sales tax piece of this does only apply to a certain portion, I think that is part of the modernization and why Montgomery County has the excise piece. And to your point, this wasn't a new change that Montgomery County has had the excise piece, is that it does apply to all of the use and services of our phones, but it is a flat rate. And so that's the difference between the sales tax there and then the excise piece. And so when I mentioned Anne Arundel County, it was to mention that they have a similar sales tax, and they've also seen the decreasing of revenue based on the fact that we use our phones differently than we did when these taxes went in. And so this was not to compare apples to oranges, understanding that Montgomery County does have local taxing authority, but looking at those who use the excise tax, it is a more modern and appropriate way as we look at how we use our phones now. And so it will be across all of the devices, not newer devices or somehow exempting devices, but it would be a change from how we look at our sales tax and then how we use the excise piece. And so thank you, Madam Chair. I think that was the main question there around those two pieces. And so hopefully that's clear and not mischaracterizing those pieces. Definitely want it to be clear the difference between the sales tax that we currently have and this bill providing the flexibility for the council to use an excise tax.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Chair Pena-Melnick.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you everyone for being here and helping us get all the facts. So my question will be for Superintendent House, and you probably won't have the answer, given that the board, as Delegate Martinez said, voted last night their budget, and they have these money in the budget, right? They voted as if this bill did not exist. I would like to know, when we do get to a vote, before we do, what is the impact, whether we're out 64 million or we're out 6.5 million? I like to know what will be cut and what will be different in that budget, right? So that I know what I'm voting for, and I can explain it to my constituents. I know you won't have that right now, and so we probably should hold the bill and get those answers, because look at the time already. So do you think you can get that for us?
So there is a reconciliation process that if the bill were to move forward, we would go through that reconciliation process and make those decisions at that particular time. Are you asking to have have a complete secondary budget before the vote?
I would like to know, when you reconcile and you're going to look at that budget, I want to know what you're going to cut, right? I like to be able to know that before I vote. And I think that's a fair question, right? Like, what is it that is going to be going away, so that we can then know and be able to explain it to my constituents when they say you voted for this. I want to know I knew what I voted for and I stand by it. But I can't do that today without knowing what you're going to reconcile or what you will cut.
That's fair. We'll
And I do, Thank you so much. And I do want to say thank you so much for sitting down with the county executive and everyone to work this out. Like, we need to work together as a county. It's so important.
Agreed.
Thank you.
And
You're muted.
I didn't realize I was muted. Sorry, I was just talking. Mr. Young, I see you want to kind of also address something that Chip and Melnick said, and I don't know if you saw that. I think. Okay. I think there's a request for, I guess, kind of similar information from the county as well as to what would happen from the county's budget perspective with the implementation of if these two bills were to pass. And then we really do got to move on because we got to get to the floor in a few minutes. So.
correct, Madam Chair, and I would offer that as well to Delegate Pinkham-Melnick, that as we're looking at this, we look at the school system budget as, you know, a part of this, but there is implications on the county side as well in terms of what these bills mean to our same constituents. And so when we look at FY24 for the school system and FY25, there's, you know, even with these bills, we'll be receiving a net income in their budget. And so when we look at their budget proposals, I think it's a little unfair to say cuts because we pass bills all the time as we are still working through budgets. And so I think that they would have to, it is a restructuring if these bills were to pass, but it's still with an increase from what they have from FY24. And so what they were able to do in FY24, they would have additional funds even with these bills to do it. But on the county side, you know, there are going to be, you know, if these bills were not to pass, real impacts to our same constituents in terms of our trash pickup, in terms of our stormwater management projects, in terms to the aid that we're able to provide to our nonprofits that do provide these critical services. It's going to be tangible results, and not just for this year, but in years future. And so I think as we look for, you know, the big thing here is that we're looking to mitigate some of that impact to our same constituents with these bills, while still making sure that we can fund our schools at the blueprint levels. And so I think that's the important piece. So as the school system is looking at their budget with additional money from the state, and I think it's important to look at all of the shares of money that they get, not just county contribution, but from federal and from the state. And the state is making those decisions as well of how we make sure our schools receive this educational funding to provide world-class education. This gives the county tools to do that while not making critical cuts. And our cuts are actualized on this budget, that we've already started making these cuts. We're already making cuts on the county side to try to, as much as we can, limit the impact to our constituents. So I think that's a point that I did want to make clear. And thank you, Delegate Pinkham, for bringing this up because, you know, budgets do have impact, and I think they do for the county as well.
Okay. Thank you.
May I respond, please? Because he replied, thank you so much. So thank you. So, Mr. Young, last night I was in my office late and I received a letter from Chairman of the Council, Jolene Ivey, which had everything that you just stated. But what I did not have on my desk last night in anticipation, because I prepared to do this vote, is the same from the superintendent, because last time he was here, before you sat down, he stated that mental health and disability, right, those programs will be cut. So since now things have changed, I want to know what, if those are not going to be cut, what is it? Because I received your letter. It's clear to me what the impact will be, and I read it. But what I didn't have and was missing from my desk was his response. So that's all I'm asking for, okay? I am very balanced. Thank you.
Delegate Tolles, and I see
Yes.
Superintendent House, I know you want to respond.
No, I just have a quick question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. They can get back to me with the information, but a couple questions, and I haven't asked a question all day, so this is my first question.
I know.
So thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity. So the question, I guess you can get back to me, Ron, is number one, what exactly are the cuts? And if you put it in the letter, I am so sorry. We've been swamped here. So if you can tell me quickly, like some significant cuts that will be made, even if this passes, because I think it's important for the public to know that. And then second question is, as a former council member, I wanted to know, so that's, knowing how cuts work as a former council member, that's my question. But my second question is, I think that Delegate Austin brought up in terms of development. Can you tell me, in the time that the administration and any council members, have they been there, have they waived the education fee that has to be paid when development has happened in the county? I know that oftentimes when I was there was bills from the administration or even council members who wanted to encourage development, but waived the development fee that's given for education and public safety. So can you tell me, in the last 5 years or 6 years, has that been, has a bill been put in to waive that fee for any developers? Thank you, because that is money that we have lost over the years. And I think that, if based off our budget constraints and wanting to fund and the importance of funding the blueprint, we need to make sure that we deter that from happening. But I would like to know if that has happened in the past 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Tolles. And if I could respond, Madam Chair.
Yes, really quickly.
Briefly.
Can I ask, I'm sorry to cut in, but I'm looking at the time, it's 10:46.
I know.
We really got, Mr. Young, I'm just gonna ask, if you're gonna say it really quickly, because the bell's about to ring and we have to be on the floor. We cannot continue. And then from there, Madam Chair, I'm gonna
end
ask
the
you
meeting at
to,
that point.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And so I'll be brief, and Delegate Tolles, I will have to get back to you on the latter part of your question. But on the first part, just to be blunt around the major cuts, I mean, we're talking about our Fair Election Fund. We're talking about a PAYGO funding, our reentry program funding, arts and humanity councils. We're talking about critical trash pickup, tree trimming, services, support to our libraries, funding for our nonprofits that we get for grants, strategic community grants. All of those would be negatively impacted if these bills weren't to pass. And so when we look at, in closing, look at the budget and we talk about budget holes and budget gaps and cuts, when we look at the money that we are putting into education through the blueprint and the investments that both the county and the state are making, that when a department, and all of our departments are coming back this year with budget cuts, all the departments across our jurisdiction. And so when we look at the county school system that's receiving more money net than what they received last year, I would not characterize that as a cut. I think that's intellectually dishonest to say that an increase in any regard is a cut.
Okay. We're going to have to move on. It's 10:47. Right now, there's a motion to recommit on the floor. I'm willing to hold both bills till next Friday. One, that will give Delegate Alston time to do her amendment, but I can only do this for one more week, and that will be it. We're going to have to move on. But right now, we have the motion to recommit on the floor. So Delegate Alston, I don't know if you want to withdraw your motion, and then we can do a motion to hold.
Yes, based on your assertion that you will hold this bill till next Friday, I'm willing to withdraw the motion.
Okay. Can I get a motion in a second on the whole?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Second. Yeah.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All right, opposed? All right, so we're going to revisit both of these tomorrow. I expect to have the amendment as soon as possible from Delegate Alston, and we'll circulate that amongst the members, and we will take up a vote on both of these matters on Friday. Thank you all. This concludes the meeting of the Prince George's County House Delegation for February the 23rd, 2024. The time is now 10:49 a.m. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Belongs
Thank you.
to